welcome back. Dark Recaps here. Unfortunately for some people, being home alone can sometimes get spooky or even scary, given the situation. Be warned, what follows next is a series of true, disturbing home alone stories that happened to 3 different individuals. Before we continue, I would like to thank you all for the support on my previous video, and welcome all my recent subscribers. If you have a suggestion on how I can improve my content, leave me a comment. Otherwise, consider browsing through some of my other videos on my channel. Let's begin. An intruder with mysterious intentions. I hate being alone because I am very easily scared of the dark, and there's a very good reason why. When I was a child, I had a traumatic experience when our family home was broken into by someone. I was around 14 years old when I was sleeping one night and woke up to the sound of a loud thud downstairs. I got up and slowly made my way to the door. I put my ear against the door to listen to what was going on. I knew my parents were asleep because it was around 3 in the morning and there was no sound coming from their room. That's when I heard someone walking in the downstairs living room. The footsteps appeared to be getting closer. I assumed they were coming up the stairway, so I screamed as loud as I could and ran towards my parents' bedroom. My dad woke up and ran out of his room into the hallway, meeting me halfway. He was trying to find out what happened, and that's when we both heard someone running out of the house. While escaping, they knocked over one of my mother's vases, which made the loudest shatter noise ever. Anyway, that experience scared me for life, so now when I have to be alone in the house, I get very anxious. My husband knew about my past experience and what I'm like, so we decided to adopt a dog. She was a Labrador and very friendly, but was approaching her senior years and hardly ever had energy. Last year, my husband had to fly out for a work meeting on a weekend just after our wedding anniversary. I was already terrified because I knew that my troubled past can come back and haunt me at any time, especially when I am home alone. After my husband had left, I woke up in the morning with our dog next to me in bed. Nothing looked out of the ordinary for the time that I was in my bedroom. It looked like it was raining during the night, as I could see raindrops on the window. Our home is pretty well insulated, so I wasn't sure why it felt so cold in the house. As I made my way downstairs to make breakfast, it really felt like a door or window had been left open during the night. I got to the kitchen, and that's when I noticed that the back door was unlocked and left pretty much fully open. I was so shocked to see this because I was certain that I had locked up the night before. I felt goosebumps rush down my body. I desperately called my husband and told him about the situation. He told me to call the police immediately. I rushed to shut the door and locked it up. Inspecting around the house, I noticed that some of the windows at the back were left open as well. I was terrified by the idea that someone was in the house with me that night. I was sure that someone broke into the house in an attempt to burgle us, or maybe even had worse intentions. But I could not understand how the door lock was not broken. Strangely, I didn't find any items missing from the house either. The police arrived pretty quickly and inspected the house. They found nothing out of place and there were no signs of forced entry. They asked me a series of questions, took notes, and investigated the surroundings to see if our neighbors or anyone in the area had seen anyone suspicious early in the morning. They came back to me and told me that one of my neighbors down the street had a video surveillance camera which had a good view of the front of our house. When they went through the footage, they told me there was a figure of a tall-looking man lurking around my house in the very early hours of the morning. He was wearing a black hoodie and appeared to be wearing gloves. They told me it was around 3:30 in the morning when he disappeared around to the back of our house and never appeared again. Since then, they have not been able to track his movements. The police told me that they will be investigating and will do their best to locate him and find out what his intentions were. They said they would keep me updated on their findings. It has now been over a year without any information or updates from them. My husband had a security camera put up in the back in front of our house. They are both motion-activated cameras that stayed on all day and night, but they never got triggered. That made me feel better, but we are both still in the dark about this person, who he was, or what he was looking for. Sometimes I am unable to sleep at night without thinking of what could have happened to me. A whisper of terror. This happened at the end of October last year, just after Halloween. It was something so spooky. I had never experienced anything similar in my life before. I was so terrified I couldn't understand what had happened for days. Basically, I lived on my own in a one-bedroom apartment. It was located on the first floor. It was a pretty safe area just outside Atlanta with little going on. One evening I had just finished my work for my university project and was having some downtime on the bed with my cat. I was watching some Netflix and had ordered some takeaways since I felt really lazy to prepare anything to eat. A good half hour later I heard a knock on my front door, and sure enough I saw my delivery guy through the peephole. As I was eating my food, I noticed my cat walking towards the front door. Weirdly, he had his head tilted to one side while walking slowly. I didn't understand why. I thought maybe he was in some sort of pain or something. When he got to the door, he sat down and just stared at the front door for a good 5 minutes, as if someone was there. It was weird because my cat had never done anything creepy like this before. During Halloween I binge-watched a lot of horror movies, which I wish I hadn't because it kind of made me feel worse about his actions. His behavior kind of creeped me out a bit, but I tried not to pay too much attention. Needless to say, I couldn't help but think to myself that it was completely out of his character to do anything like this, so something must be up. Anyway, I told him to stop being silly and come back to the living room with me. But he still didn't move away from the door. He just kept staring and wagging his tail from side to side every once in a while. I walked over and picked him up, carrying him back with me to my room. I finished my food and decided to play with him for a little bit because he was sleeping and being lazy for pretty much the whole day. I thought maybe that would clear his and my mind a little bit. As I played with him, I heard a soft knock on the front door again. I wasn't sure if I invited anyone over or not. I thought about it for a second and realized that I hadn't. I made my way over to the door and looked through the peephole to see nobody there. I was confused and remembered the goosebumps running down my body like it was yesterday. Anyway, I tried calming myself down, knowing I shouldn't overthink the situation. I knew that if I did, I'd only scare myself more. Disregarding the mysterious knock or whatever, I continued to play with my cat until he was tired enough to sleep, otherwise he would wake me up in the middle of the night for no reason. While tidying up the room for my takeaway, I kept thinking about the door knock. I was hoping that someone was just playing an innocent prank on me, some kids or something. Or maybe it was nothing at all and I just misheard someone knocking on the next door altogether. I switched the TV off and started preparing for bed. As I came out of the bathroom, I noticed my cat was asleep on the bed. I remember looking at him and thinking how cute he was. He had curled up in a little ball and that really put a smile on my face. I grabbed my phone and started recording a short video of him. I would usually take random videos of my cat. I have a lot of them. Before getting into my bed, I thought I'd go and check the door one last time. I wanted to make sure nobody was standing there or something. As I looked through the peephole, I could see that there was nobody there. Relieved, I made my way to bed. Now this is the effing creepy part about the whole experience that night. It was already around 2 in the morning, and as I scrolled through my phone, I wanted to watch the video of my cat that I just took earlier. I started watching it with my earphones in, and suddenly I could hear what sounded like someone else's voice outside my window, which was located just above my head. I paused the video and turned down the volume. I froze out of fear and continued to listen, and that's when I heard a man's voice whisper, "I'll get you next time." Ha ha ha. That's when I yelled out of terror and turned on my light to see if anyone was there. Nobody was there. I called the police to report the incident, but when they got to me they couldn't find anything either, so all they did was give me a crime number. I have been living in fear ever since, and have not slept well at all. I am always worried that whoever it was is going to come back, even though I have now moved apartments. The silent vehicle. I live in Europe. Renting a house here doesn't cost that much compared to other countries. The house I live in is located in the countryside, so it is quite cheap. It's also a very peaceful place, with the closest neighbors being around 2 minutes away. There's a road right next to the house, however, so it does get quite noisy during some days and nights depending on the traffic. In addition, there's practically no driveway. The main road is less than 20 meters away from my bedroom window. I have to drive around to the back of the house to park the car in my back garden, if you understand what I mean. I live alone, and I usually work late shifts at a local restaurant. What I'm about to tell you happened not too long ago. I would guess around 8 or 9 weeks have passed since it happened. It was around noon on a Friday, and I was preparing for my shift as usual, which was supposed to end around 11 at night. The weather that day was particularly bad, I remember, especially during the day. It was very gray and rainy with some occasional thunder here and there. Anyway, I got ready and left for work. When I got there, I had a look at my scheduled work tasks, and it turned out that I was closing the bar that night. This meant that it was a real possibility that I would have to stay longer until all the customers had left. I didn't like to work in the bar because you never really knew exactly what time you could leave. Moving on, it was around 9 p.m. The only people left with me were bartenders and a few regulars who would stay late because they were too drunk to understand it was home time. I'm sure you understand what I mean. At that stage, it was still raining. The weather was horrible, so I thought it may take them a while to leave, but I started cleaning up anyway. Then, I was taking out the empty bottles to the recycling bins just around the back of the building when I saw this random guy standing there having a cigarette. He stood a few meters away from me and was facing away. He was kind of tall, had no hair, and looked pretty well dressed for a bar guy. As I was sorting the bottles in preparation for recycling, I kept catching him turning around and glancing over at me from time to time. He had this seemingly sinister look on his face, which did cause me to feel a little uneasy. I tried to ignore him and disregard any negative thoughts I was thinking of. I'm not sure what exactly was the problem, but something just felt off about him. I am also not the type to go out and confront someone if I feel there's an issue, especially during my shift. Anyway, the last customers had left and my shift was also coming to an end. I managed to get out of work around 11:30, which was pretty good for a Friday night. I gathered up my things and left. I walked out the door and walked over to my car. The parking lot was usually empty at this time of night. I know this because I usually finish around this time and there's nobody here. But this time I noticed a car in a dark corner of the parking lot. Again, I did my best not to think about anything bad and make up pointless assumptions in my head. Then, as I made my way out of the parking lot, I noticed bright headlights in my rear view. However, by the time I got on the freeway home, they were gone, and I felt relieved. I was sitting in my bedroom eating an oven-baked pizza. That's when I hear a car pull up next to my house. It was so easy to tell because my bedroom's window was only a couple of meters away from the road. I looked out the window and I saw a car on the side of the road, exactly in line with my window. It seemed to stay there idling for a good 10 minutes, but then the lights turned off and I didn't hear its engine anymore. Next thing I heard was the door open and close. I was a little shook up because I had no neighbors around me and I didn't know where this guy was intending on going. I switched the light off in my bedroom and listened carefully to see what was going to happen next. At that point, I was ready for anything. There was an eerie silence. I kept thinking if there was a connection between the guy in the bar and this creepy car that just pulled up outside my house. I stayed quiet for another 10 minutes, but there was absolutely no sound I could hear. Nothing at all. That's when I got up and decided to go outside to see if anyone or anything was there. I made my way to the front door and slowly opened it. I did my best to make as little noise as possible. I quietly walked around the garden and towards the back of my house, but all that was there was my car. Not finding anything suspicious, I decided to slowly make my way to the front and see if I could understand what the hell was going on with this creepy car. That's when things got extremely frightening. So I had crouched my way to the front of the house, only to find the car gone, nothing there. No sound of it driving away, no sound of any doors open or close. Nothing. I knew it was there because there were fresh tire marks in the gravel. I remember being so scared that I wasn't even thinking straight. I ran inside and locked everything. I couldn't sleep that night and for the next few days. I kept thinking I had a weird dude giving me sinister looks at work, a suspicious car in the parking lot, and now some car pulled up to my house and left without a sound or trace. I couldn't stop thinking about the guy in the bar. If he'd followed me home or something. I submitted a police report about the incident, but I haven't received any updates. I never found out what it was. However, it hasn't happened again, and I hope it remains this way. Thank you for watching. What did you think of these stories? Would you have different reactions to the given situations? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed your time here. If you did, please consider leaving a like on this video. If you're hungry for more content like this, subscribe to me. Dark Recaps. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.